Leaving his hotel in West Palm Beach yesterday, as we've been talking about, he met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago on Friday night. The president-elect described the meeting as very productive, just days after he threatened to impose 25% tariffs on all Canadian products entering the United States. Trudeau previously said those kinds of tariffs would harm Canadians and Americans and end up hurting American businesses, as we heard just earlier in the show. Michigan is a border state with close ties to Canada, obviously, and Michigan Democratic Representative Haley Stevens joins me live now. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to be with you.
Appreciate you being here. Okay, so we're hearing after that meeting on Friday, which I'm sure you were watching as well, that there was no guarantee given by the president-elect to remove that idea of 25% tariffs, but that Justin Trudeau left feeling a little bit optimistic. I wonder what you make of this in-person meeting, first of all, and whether you think that this is a good sign of things.
Well, first of all, I was delighted to see that Mr. Trudeau went and visited with President-elect Trump. He's the first of the G7 leadership to go down and take such a meeting. He came in on a good note. It wasn't aggressive. You know, we're just through here in the United States of America a very grueling election cycle. Yeah. I have been in Michigan, which is one of those swing states. And even though the person who I was supporting for president didn't win, Donald Trump not only won the election, he won my state. And he is kind of coming in feeling like he has a little bit of a mandate. And I agree with President Biden that I think these tariffs are a little extreme. It's a harsh note to start on, particularly as this next couple of years, we're going to be looking at the renegotiation of USMCA. And we've got a strong competitive framework here in North America to push back on China. And then to say to our greatest trade partner, I mean, the United States-Canadian trade relationship is the greatest trade relationship in the world. And before you even take the oath of office to say that you're going to slap 25% tariffs down on Canada, look, that border is very different than our southern border. And some of the challenges that Mexico continues to face with trafficking and cartels and drugs and the like. I mean, we've got strong border security in the north. And coming from automotive land, I know how inextricable the relationship is. I can't imagine what it'd be like to slap 25% tariffs on Canadian parts components, on energy and the like. It just throw our supply chain, in particular our auto industry, into disarray, which is why you saw the collective stock price of GM, Ford, Stellantis go down just after these threats were made. And it's part of what exhausts people. So I'm trying to throw some olive branches to the president. But I certainly want to make the point clear that we just can't afford these tariffs in Michigan.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more specifically about your state then. Obviously, auto would be the first place that I would think of, as you pointed out. And because of how the auto industries are so linked in terms of manufacturing across the border, I don't even know how that would work if one piece goes back and forth across the border multiple times. What would be your biggest fear about that kind of level of tariff for Michigan?
Well, I'll tell you how it would work. I mean, it'd work by slamming the consumer. And we just see skyrocketing costs where we've already been struggling with skyrocketing costs. We'd also see incredible disruptions. You know, I take regular visits to our supply chain. I sit down with our small businesses. I see how inextricable it is. I mean, frankly, people forget that Canada's even an export destination, right? They just see it almost sometimes as another state, but yet they're going through these export controls. And so when you look at parts, components, tool and die, there's an incredible tool and die present in Canada, and certainly with stamping as well as just the critical goods that are needed. And I think about this, you know, I worked in President Obama's administration. I worked on the bipartisan auto rescue that rescued General Motors and Chrysler, staved them off from an actual liquidation of their companies. That would not have happened. That deal would have not have happened if it were not for our Canadian counterparts, the unions as well as the government. And, you know, as someone who serves in the United States Congress, I'm going into my fourth term, I deeply value the relationship between our countries. And frankly, I want to work with Canada even further on critical minerals, on critical materials, on components that we're way too overly reliant on China from. So it's always interesting with Mr. Trump because he's very aggressive. He's not afraid to shake things up with our allies. Look, I can try and play the crystal ball with how he thinks. Part of me wants to believe maybe this is about China. Obviously, the upsets around some of the drug crisis that we have here in the United States of America. But we've really got to make it clear to all of you in Canada that we love you, we value our trade relationship, and we want to continue to go forward into this new marker in time, this quarter 21st century, together to build off of the strengths of our relationship and continue to innovate for the world.
Representative Stevens, you mentioned there a little bit some of the things that seem to be of concern to the president-elect, and one of them is the border. So I wonder from your perspective whether you think, because the Canadian government has expressed some desire to beef things up a little bit at the border, whether you think Canada could be doing more to secure the border.
Well, frankly, I remember what it was like before 9/11, and I know what it's like now. I carry a passport card because I know I need to show the identification. I know how serious it's treated. There are different laws between our countries. There's obviously a friendly relationship, but we don't see a lot of those problems that we do with the southern border, in part because people aren't coming up through the Darien Straits and the vast migration. And certainly we all have a shared commitment to tackling and combating terrorism. And just to go back to the ramifications of tariffs on not only our supply chain and our automotive sector, but also recognizing that Canada is a tremendous energy exporter to the United States of America. We don't want to see those fuel costs go up. You know, you look at Mexico, costs of produce that would go up to everyday Americans. And look, we all want the best outcomes, for the constituencies and the people that we serve. And I also understand that there are global dynamics at play. So look, Trudeau visited with Trump. We're hearing good notes out of that. Obviously need to see him take the oath of office, but I'm going to be pushing back on these tariffs. I'm really trying to, get through to this new administration, rather, that industrial policy works. Things like what we did investing in chips. This is something, microchips for that matter. This is something that we could do with critical minerals, leveraging trade relationships like our relationship with Canada. We know that our automakers are going over there in search of these minerals and purchase agreements with your country. And we're proud of how you guys do it. Frankly, it's something that we could learn from here in the United States of America. And so we want to continue to double down on that, not cause disruption, chaos, and confusion for the hard-hit American consumer.
Representative Haley Stevens, so great of you to make the time for Canada, because as you've made the case there, this could deeply affect your state as well. Please come back. Nice to speak with you this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Earlier, I spoke to the owner of a hardware store in New York, and she says she's worried about those added costs and how it would affect her business. Debbie Kavorias, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Tell me a little bit about your hardware store in terms of what kind of products you have to import from other places, including Canada.
Sure. It's a neighborhood hardware store. It's been in business for over 80 years, 50 years in our family.
Wow.
So we have a lot of regular customers. We also have house accounts for buildings and houses that are in our neighborhood. We supply building supplies, we supply paint, hardware, tools, housewares, cleaning supplies.
Right.
It's a full range hardware store.
Right. And how much of that stuff is imported from Canada, Mexico, China, or another country I'm not thinking of?
Sure. I would say at least 70%.
Okay.
Overall.
So that's a lot. It makes up a lot of your business. And if President Trump were to impose 25% on imports, do you have a sense of what that would do to your business?
It's certainly, my fear would be that we would have to cut down on inventory, or that the inventory wouldn't be available. some of our suppliers will not import as much as they normally do if that's the tariff on, especially Mexico and Canada.
And I imagine that the suppliers would pass down that cost to you, would they not?
If they did continue to import, sure.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
what would that do to you?
We'd have to pass it along to our customers to some degree. But we also have to keep in mind that we have to stay competitive with our larger suppliers that are near us.
Right.
So as much as we'd like to pass it on if we need to, we also have to, it's a very thin line that we're walking.
Yeah, because you're competing with big box hardware stores, I would imagine, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And online.
Yeah. So have you started to think of what you would do if this goes forward or make any adjustments?
I believe what we would need to do is shop around more. We do have our regular suppliers. I'm not sure that we'd be able to stay with all of them.
Yeah.
We have to limit what we bring in so that we're not stuck with items or the items are too expensive for our clients.
Would there be...
We're very aware.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, would there be enough suppliers of the things you need in the United States or no?
No. They're not, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think we're equipped at this point to make up for anything that's imported. I mean, obviously there are some things, but again, because we're not well equipped, that price is not going to be as cheap as it would be from Mexico, Canada, and China. It will be more expensive because we don't have that kind of facility to produce what we're looking for. Not at this time, at least.
Yeah. What do you think the president-elect is doing here? Do you think that this is a real threat? Do you think that he's trying to negotiate with Canada and Mexico? What do you think is...
I definitely do. I can't imagine that 25% he would put that kind of tariff. I mean, that you're talking about a huge percentage. I don't believe that, and again, it's my opinion, I don't believe it's going to be that high if he puts it in at all. I do think he's trying to negotiate, especially with Mexico. You know, he's talked about if the decrease comes in on people crossing the border, or you know, the drugs coming into the country, he's willing to lower that. So I think 25% is a threat at this point. I'm hoping it doesn't become a reality.
Yeah, well, I hope that for you too, Debbie. I mean, I don't know how many people think about how it will affect people in the United States as well as in Canada.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I keep thinking about is how everyone locally on the national level, they talk about saving small business. And truly, we are a small business compared to others, big box stores. And so it's a little contradictory how, if we're going to save small business, how are we going to survive that kind of tariff? Yeah, it's really, it doesn't look good for small business, for sure.
Debbie Kavorias, thank you so much for making the time. Maybe we'll talk to you in a number of months and see where things are at, and hoping for the best for you.
That would be great.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Debbie.
you.
Bye-bye.